The story begins in the global ice age, a place covered with ice that even human nature is also frozen. The ground is covered with snow and people walking around feel how cold it is. Right now, our MC, Xiaomo, was walking in the alley. He was wearing a thick jacket with a hoodie, thick pants, and boots. He was also carrying a bag. Every time he breathes using his mouth, the air comes out like a cloud of smoke. When he arrived at his final destination, he proclaimed that the place hadn't been explored yet. He was here, trying to search for some food and fuel. These two things, once easy to obtain, have become extremely precious. He was above a building, and there was ice that looked like an ice rink. Since he observed that the ice was thick enough, he believed that it should be safe, so he stood in the middle. But then, he noticed that he was shaking. Everything around him shook, so he confirmed that there was an earthquake. He panicked and wanted to run away, but the ice where he was standing had shattered to pieces. In this frozen world, he feels like God is telling them that human civilization is as fragile as thin ice, vulnerable to a single blow. After the ice crumbled, Xiaomo was falling. He was afraid, thinking that he was going to die. He was holding a weapon and used it to pierce the ice wall, hoping that it wouldn't break so he could climb. But then, his weapon slid down and he could not stop it at all. Unfortunately, he fell into a building, and he was lucky enough since he fell into the snow, so he was unharmed. He was smiling as he thought that he was so lucky, without knowing that there was a danger waiting for him. What's even more despairing in this frozen world is a creature named White Skin who hunts human beings. And at this moment, it turned out that this monster was just standing staring at Xiaomo. He was dumbfounded and realized that he was really unlucky. He immediately ran away from the monster, and the monster was roaring while chasing him. There were a lot of ice stalactites in the area. He ran as fast as he could, but he couldn't stop himself from staring at the monster, knowing that he was now in a disaster. While the monster was chasing him, it caused the ice stalactites to be shaken down and cut off. The monster was smiling, thinking that there was a human he could finally eat. But then, the stalactites fell on it and pierced from its back to the front. Xiaomo stared at the dead monster and concluded that it might be because there was too much noise making the ice stalactites shaken down. He was grateful, knowing that he was saved because of it. But then, a pile of rocks above him started to collapse. He panicked, knowing that this state was worst. Huge rocks fell in front of him, causing the snow to splatter. The huge snow pushed him away, and he was afraid that he might be buried alive at this rate. He was really buried, but his one hand was just above the snow. He wasn't aware that there was an unknown creature beside his hand. This creature had entered his body, and he suddenly opened his eyes in shock. He found himself already above the snow. He thought that everything was just a dream. He was touching the back of his neck, and he was really clueless that a weird thing possessed him. He was thinking too much, but then he realized that he had been outside long enough, so he decided to just go back home quickly. When he stood, he saw a piece of chocolate, so he was glad that he won't return empty-handed. He then walked back to his house and arrived at a place where there was a thing he called passage. Because most of the city is frozen by ice, the only way home is through this passage. He opened it and dropped his rope. Day after day, he doesn't know how long this kind of life will last. When he climbed down, he saw people around shivering in the cold. The situation in this building is also quite bad compared to the outside. When the disaster struck, many people were trapped in this building. And now, with scarce supplies, he dare not imagine what these people will do. In this apocalyptic world, no one can guarantee that they will not cross that line. He was looking around and noticed that those men chasing him to steal his food weren't patrolling today, so he hurried back to his home without knowing that someone was waiting for him. Before he could open the door, a lady named Xiaoming, who was his girlfriend, opened it. He was surprised that the lady opened it quickly, so he concluded she didn't lock it. The lady hugged him and reasoned out that she only wanted to see him as soon as possible. He was thrilled upon hearing it, and Xiaoming asked him angrily if he didn't want to see her quickly. He then answered that he did. It's just that he wanted her to always lock the door securely. Is locking your door more important than your girlfriend? The lady asked. To make her feel at ease, Xiaomo then handed her the chocolate he found earlier. The lady stares at it and accepts it from him. She then hugged him while saying that he was the best. Xiaomo then went to his fireplace while the lady asked him if he only brought one piece of chocolate. Xiaomo then answered yes and informed Xiaoming that he had almost been eaten by a monster just to get it. There was the blood of the monster stained on his bag, and it was clearly proof that he was telling the truth. But then, seemed like the Xiaoming didn't believe him. She was staring with anger at Xiaomo while squeezing the chocolate in her hand. Xiaoming sat down in front of his fireplace to warm his body. He was so down that he couldn't think of another way to find a portion of decent food. He opened the sack of seeds he collected before, and he wondered if they could just eat it to survive for the day. He stares at the plants he planted inside his house while thinking that the situation with the seeds they planted before is not very optimistic. Now, if they eat the seeds, there will be no hope at all. If they continued in this situation, he was afraid that everyone might lose their minds. He got the monster's meat inside his backpack, and it turned out that he brought it home. If the meat of those monsters roaming around isn't poisonous, he believes that the people in this building wouldn't have to endure hunger, and those people stealing food surely didn't exist. He then threw the meat in the flame and looked for the brighter side, that the fat from those monsters was a good fuel, and at least in this frozen world, they wouldn't freeze to death. He looked at his clock and found out that the date was already the 14th of February, which meant Valentine's Day. He touched his head and admitted that he had forgotten it, so he felt sorry for his girlfriend Xiaoming. He went to the living room to apologize and greet the lady, but then Xiaoming disappeared. He was wondering where the lady went, then he heard someone knocking on the door. The way it sounded is a signal of how Xiaoming knocked, so Xiaomo believes that it was her. But then, one thing that made him confused was why the lady went outside. Still, he opened the door while he uttered Xiaoming's name, but then it turned out that there were other people waiting for him to open. He was instantly attacked using a bat on his face, and as expected, it bleeds. He flew away while his blood splattered. "Merry Christmas, Brother Mo." The guy who hit him said even it wasn't Christmas yet. This guy's name is Luo Delong, the leader of those men who stole food that didn't belong to them. Surprisingly, Xiaoming was with him, rapping on his body. "Xiaoming, why did you betray me? Why did you follow Luo Delong?" Xiaomo asked, despite that he was in pain. The lady points her finger at him and angrily tells him that he cannot just fool her with a piece of chocolate. It turned out that the lady was expecting that Xiaomo was hiding all the food from her. "With such a big bag, did you bring back only air? You lied even to your girlfriend. Are you still human?" she added. Delong at the same time changed a weapon. This time, it's going to be his golf club. He hits the floor using it while saying that he feels sorry for Xiaomo. He bent down to level Xiaomo and told him that he would give him a piece of advice. He said that this is not a civilized society in this apocalyptic world, but it's the law of the jungle. "You, who can't even support your own women, which woman would be willing to follow you?" he asked. He and Xiaomo then stood and he hit the ground once again while proclaiming that weaklings have only two choices, either depend on the strong or be preyed upon by the weak. He then commanded Xiaomo to hand over the food he was hiding to him. But then, Xiaomo said that he didn't have any food to give. Delong then swung the golf club as he believed that Xiaomo refused to depend on the strong and wanted to be preyed upon by the weak. Xiaomo lifted up his hand to cover his face. He was shaking, knowing that merciless Delong wanted to hit him again. Delong hit his leg, face, and arm. Delong's men also joined, beating him to death, and he could not do anything at all since he was alone without any weapon in his hands. After hitting him, he was already so weak, but he was still alive. He heard the men searching his house but found nothing besides a rotten millet. He saw Delong sitting in front of him saying that weaklings are also meat and that they don't pick food. Delong then asked for a knife from his subordinate, and Delong smiled while holding and stabbed his eyes. While Delong was killing him, he was thinking that the ending he least wanted to see had happened after all. If there is another life, he still wants to live, he wants to survive. A few hours passed. Xiaomo was sleeping in his working station. His eyes opened and he stood while he uttered Delong's name. He was so confused the moment he found himself somewhere else. He was sure enough that he died at the hands of Delong, and now he couldn't understand seeing himself unharmed after the beating. But then it turned out that he went back from the past before a disaster happened. At this moment, it's 24 hours left until the global ice age. Protests in Queens are still ongoing. The city police department has dispatched a large number of police forces to maintain order. The elites in Manhattan are enjoying themselves at their exclusive party. Brooklyn's gangs are conducting transactions in the dirtiest streets. The whole city is unaware of what is about to happen, except for one person, which was Xiaomo. He was heading back home and he noticed the aurora in the sky. People were happy seeing it, and they immediately took their phones to take photos without knowing that this aurora was a sign of the Ice Age. Xiaomo's phone suddenly rang and he already expected who it was. It was his girlfriend Xiaoming. He remembered how the lady betrayed him, choosing to rely on the strong ones. Now, he admitted that he was really blinded by Xiaoming's appearance, a vile woman. He cannot accept it at all, so he decides to end their relationship now instead of waiting for the lady to betray him again. He then answered the call and heard the lady asking him if he was still working overtime. She also mentioned that the view of the aurora was very beautiful. Xiaomo doesn't feel thrilled at all after knowing Xiaoming's true color. He didn't give any words to the lady, but the lady still talked, asking him a favor to lend her some money, and she reasoned out that her credit card was maxed out. Of course, Xiaomo told her that they should break up, and he asked her not to call him again. He heard how the lady was shocked and asked him the reason why, but then he didn't give any response and instead dropped the call and deleted her number. Since he was given a second chance, he was eager to let a woman like Xiaoming freeze to death in the upcoming ice again. He continued to walk and arrived at the Brooklyn district. The date is the 14th of July around 11:58 p.m. Knowing that the disaster was coming, he told himself that he must be prepared. In the previous loop, within 24 hours before the Ice Age, the temperature will gradually drop to the freezing point. From now on, it's already less than 28 hours left before the world is frozen. It seems like there is plenty of time, but as the temperature drops, people will realize the problem. The society, which was already unstable, will become even more chaotic. Xiaomo computed the time he had left to collect supplies and confirmed that he already had an hour. In addition to regular supplies, in the initial chaotic environment, they also need something to protect themselves. One example of this is a gun. While he was thinking, there were two police officers staring at him as they felt that he was a suspicious guy wandering on the street so late at night. The officers then followed him and ordered him not to move. They pointed their guns to Xiaomo and commanded him to raise his hands. Xiaomo followed their command, and he was annoyed by the fact that these two officers mistook him for a robber. The yellow-haired officer then reported to their office that there was a suspect found on 4th Avenue. The other officer at the same time is interrogating Xiaomo, asking him what was in his hand. He then casually answered that it was just a phone. Deep inside him, he was irritated by these two officers, knowing that he only had a short time left. He was hoping that these officers would release him immediately after the inspection. Rookie, remember, at this time, do not approach the suspect recklessly, understand? The police officer said. The yellow-haired guy was shaking. He was commanding Xiaomo to show what was inside his bag. Xiaomo smiled at them while taking his bag from his back. He then told the officers that he was just a working class. He opened his bag, but before he could show what was inside, the yellow-haired guy then declared that there was a weapon. Because of his wrong expectation, he immediately shoots towards Xiaomo. Xiaomo was panicking, thinking that his second chance at living was going to end here. But then, he told himself that he wanted to live. And at that moment, his eyes started showing veins and he was covered with a different aura. He stares at the officers and he notices that his eyesight is different. Not only that, he also saw the bullets clearly. He was sure that the time was slowing down. He was able to dodge, so he believes everything wasn't an illusion. He was mad at the officer who dared to shoot him, and he wanted to tell him the fact that he was a taxpayer. He walked toward this officer as he didn't have time to waste on a stupid person like this guy. The officer shoots again upon seeing him walking. But then, the bullet dropped to the ground and Xiaomo continued to charge at the officer at a fast speed. He then punched the officer's face, causing him to vomit blood. After the strong blow, the officer flew away, leaving the fat officer dumbfounded. The fat officer slowly turned his head around while he was shaking in fear. He then saw his companion on the ground with dislocated bones. He was so afraid of Xiaomo. He cannot explain what was going on. He pointed his gun at Xiaomo while asking him what creature he was. Xiaomo walked toward him with clenched fists, then he answered that he didn't know either. He then dashed away and the officer immediately called the head to report the incident. While he was talking over the radio, he was staring at the area where Xiaomo was headed. He still saw the aura of Xiaomo and reported to the head that the scene that just happened was really unbelievable. Xiaomo at the same time went straight to the building where his home was located. He arrived instantly since his speed was really fast. He then entered and sat on the floor in disbelief. He was panting and seemed like every time he moved, there was always a shadow of his movement. He recalled the scene earlier, wondering if everything was real. He covered his ears with both of his hands and he questioned himself how he did it. He grabbed the gun he got from the officers and he decided to try to shoot himself one more time so he could confirm that he really had the ability. He pointed the gun at his mirror and shot. The bullet comes out and his eyes clearly see it at a slow speed. His right eye changes color again, and this time, he activated his power. He changed position to catch the bullet, but he could see in the mirror that his reflection wasn't changing at all or might be in slow motion. He caught the bullet, and by this, he confirmed that he really had gained superpowers. He also noticed earlier that there's no ice seal, yet there was a frost on his body and he doesn't have any idea why. He concludes that it might be related to high-speed movement. Like a supersonic airplane, his superpower seems to be related to speed. He smiled and clenched his fist, thinking that he had already foreseen the coming doomsday, although it's not a particularly special ability, as he believes that this ability can let him be fast one step ahead. In the middle of his excitement, he heard someone knocking on the door. He didn't have any idea who was it, so he immediately opened the door and saw the landlady. It turned out that the landlady heard a gunshot which he believed came from Xiao Mo's home. Xiao Mo then lied that it was only the sound coming from the television since his remote control was broken. He then apologizes to the old lady, and the lady is just worried knowing that the nearby supermarket just got robbed once. Plus the security isn't good in this building. She then left Xiao Mo's room and Xiao Mo thanked her for showing her concern. The lady then also told him that young people need to take care of their health, so must not work overtime too much. The lady entered her room, which was only beside Xiao Mo's room. Now back to the point, Xiao Mo was thinking again of how to solve the supplies. He then recalled that the landlady mentioned a supermarket nearby. He believes that everything can be found in this market, so he has an idea for him to start stocking up. He immediately went to the supermarket and saw the cashier yawning as she was sleepy. He was picking food to bring with him, and when he got a lot, he immediately ran back to his home using his superpower. Everything was caught on the CCTV. But then, the cashier was really clueless. She then saw a long receipt come out from the machine and she was shocked to see it. "What's going on? Did someone buy something just now?" she asked in confusion. When he touched the receipt, he found a message at the bottom. Of course, it surely came from Xiao Mo. He apologizes to the cashier and hopes that she won't be afraid of him. He also told the lady to go home and be safe. At this moment, two men entered the store with guns. One man pointed the gun at the lady and apologized to her, then declared that it was already time for robbery. He ordered the cashier to hand over the money, and all of them weren't aware that there was a monster heading to them. The gun of the men suddenly freezes and the guy feels cold. The monster then slowly entered the door. The two men immediately looked at the door since they noticed a shadow. Then they saw the monster. It had eyes everywhere and it was faceless. The green-haired guy removed his glasses and stared at the monster. He was terrified and questioned what kind of monster it was. His comrade immediately shoots the monster several times and the monster's blood, which is blue, splattered. The green-haired guy also shot the monster, but he complained about the fact that it was invincible. The monster extended its hand and grabbed the green-haired guy. The monster pulled the man's hair like a doll and beheaded him. It also attacked the red-haired guy and killed him mercilessly. The scene was recorded by the lady despite that she was shaking in fear. It was seen in her live how the monster ate the man. There were two police security who saw the live and they thought that it was just a fake video. The live broadcast ended the moment a message from the government suddenly popped out. Everyone's attention was called out, so they concluded that there might have something bad happened. At this moment, Xiao Mo was inside his home. He opened the window and he also heard the government's announcement. The alarm came from the Department of Homeland Security and Logistics. Xiao Mo was aware that the disaster had started. The DHSL said that the city experiencing a cold wave for unknown reasons. Citizens are asked to close their doors and windows and stay warm and not go out. The cold wave is coming. It arrives first in Brooklyn. The time is already 1 a.m. In Building 58 in the new district, a regular apartment is where Xiao Mo lived. The securities in this building were alarmed upon hearing an announcement coming from the government. There was also a lady residing in this building. Everyone was asked not to panic. Xiao Mo was drilling his window to make sure that the cold air wouldn't enter. Even at this time, Luo Delong was hunting people. He was in the same building where Xiao Mo lived. Right now, he ordered his men to beat up a young boy. The boy was in pain and denied Delong's accusation toward him. Delong was smoking. He grabbed his phone from his suit and let the boy see the evidence of his accusation. It was a photo of the boy together with the new daughter of Delong. Delong believes that this young boy is trying to drug his daughter. Still, the boy denied it and reasoned out that he didn't know at that time. Delong was holding a knife and said, "Forget it, someone like you can only hope that God still has mercy on you." He then pulled the young boy's hand and stabbed it several times without any hesitation. Delong really killed the boy and cut off one of the boy's fingers and put it in his collection. Inside has a total of 6 fingers, and the owners of these fingers are people who did something that Delong doesn't like. He then walked away while his one subordinate asked what to do with the dead body. He then answered to burn it using a boiler. He ordered his men to throw the dead body on the boiler, and his men then followed his order. Since the boiler looked quite old, one of the guys wondered if it would not explode after putting a dead body inside. But then the other guy said that he was saying nonsense. Still, the guy who was trying to lock the boiler senses that something isn't right. Some inside the boiler exploded, causing him to fly away on the ground. His companion then immediately helped him to stand, but then he was dumbfounded when he saw something in front of them. Going back to Xiao Mo, he was still drilling inside his house. He planted lots of plants and made a flame from his cultivating crops. With the current supplies he had, even if he didn't go out, He believed he could hold on for a long time, but he was aware that everything wasn't enough. He already expected that supplies would eventually run out, so sustainable self-sufficiency is the key. His plan is to build a perfect survival room that is self-sufficient. Since the freezing phenomenon has been going on for almost an hour, he realizes that he needs to speed up more. He then decided to accelerate and embrace the time as his life. When he was about to start working again, he heard knocking once again. When he opened it, he realized that the scene was very familiar since it was the same as when he opened the time back then when his girlfriend betrayed him. This time, the people who came were the building's security. Xiaomo was wondering why the security visited him at this hour. Still, he smiled at them and asked them what was wrong. According to the security, the broadcast just said the temperature outside suddenly dropped, but then the heating was broken, and they were afraid people wouldn't notice it at night, which is why they came to remind everyone to be safe. Upon hearing it, Xiaomo then remembered something similar happened last week. The heating malfunctioned at this time and wasn't repaired in time. By the time he went to fix it, it was completely scrapped. He didn't want to repeat the same mistake this time, so he wanted to fix it as soon as possible. He immediately asked the security guy to take him to the boiler. He left his room and headed upstairs. But then, the security guy told him that he was in the wrong way. As per the security, the apartment's boiler room is on the basement level, so they have to downstairs. But then, Xiaomo remembered that the boiler room in the apartment was illegal. Also, Mrs. Fang, the landlady, mentioned to him back then that the boiler's location should be upstairs. He then concludes that he might have remembered it wrong this time, so he followed the security instead of forcing himself to follow his instinct. When they arrived in the basement, it was very cold. The smoke was also a bit strange for him as it looked like cold air. Meanwhile, he finished fixing the boiler. He was about to close it, but then there was a familiar liquid stick on his hand. "Any other problems?" the security asked without knowing that there was a monster above him. The monster was so huge and instantly smashed the security's head. The monster then opened its mouth and swallowed the man. Xiaomo was shocked, thinking why White Skin had appeared too early. The other security guard, which is Joe, was also dumbfounded, staring at the monster in front of them, wondering what creature it was. The monster extended its arms, planning to catch Joe alive. Xiaomo's power instantly activates and he immediately accelerates towards Joe and grabs him away. The monster failed to smash Joe, and Xiaomo was relieved that he was able to save Joe. Since the door in this basement was still open, he decided to go out and escape, as he believed that he could manage to escape as long as he would use a sprint. He sprinted as fast as he could, but then the monster chased him. He was annoyed as he noticed that the monster kept up with his speed. The monster widely opened its mouth, and Xiaomo then concluded that his speed wasn't fast enough because he was carrying Joe. He was sorry for Joe as he decided to throw him away before the monster could eat them both alive. He was staring at the door and threw Joe outside the basement to keep him safe. Joe was still dumbfounded as he couldn't explain the situation. He slammed outside the basement and Xiaomo was glad that he was already safe now. At the same time, the monster was slammed on the ground as it failed to catch the humans. Its eyes were the same as the one Xiaomo had. At this moment, Xiaomo thought that his speed earlier really had something to do with Joe since he was carrying him. Still, he cannot think of a reason why he slowed down and wanted to figure it out as soon as possible. When he was holding on to Joe, White Skin could catch up on him. Just now, without Joe, he was faster than the White Skin, and he concludes that there might be some condition that nullifies his ability. While he was thinking, the monster lifted up its hand and tried to catch Xiaomo, but Xiaomo instantly dodged. One thing he can confirm is this condition has nothing to do with the White Skin, and he believes it was originally related to Joe. He recalled that strange things happened the moment he threw Joe outside the basement. He saw an energy appearing on Joe similar to when his ability activated. He decided to figure it out using a pebble. He stares at the two pebbles, then witnesses how his energy contaminated it. He then understood a bit. In his previous life, humans faced White Skin with no chance of survival, so when he saw White Skin, all he could think of was to run as fast as he could. But now it's different. If his guess is correct, he concludes that the former prey can also become the hunter. He grabbed one pebble and stared at the monster. He then prepared himself to throw it away, just like what he did to Joe. The moment he threw it to the monster, it created a fast speed that caused the monster to be instantly eliminated. At this point, he confirmed that his prediction was right. His ability only affects targets contaminated with energy. As long as they are contaminated by energy, he can accelerate them. As long as it can accelerate, he believes that the kinetic energy of objects will increase. Even a small pebble accelerated to a certain extent can have the power of an electromagnetic. All of a sudden, blue blood dropped on the ground and he was shocked to realize that it came from him. He stares at his hand, which has the blood. The blood was dripping from his eye similar to the monster's. He doesn't know what is happening to him at all. He vomits a lot of blue blood and falls to the ground. He feels so weak and he cannot stand as he feels that his body is freezing. Then he saw Joe walk towards him. He was thankful that Joe was alive after throwing him. Joe was telling him not to sleep and keep his eyes open. Still, he closed both of his eyes and he heard Joe waking him up. When he opened his eyes, he found himself inside Joe's house. Joe asked his wife about the situation outside and the lady replied that the wind was very cold so they could not run to the hospital. His kids also added that they cannot hold back the blizzard and the main gate of their room is frozen. Joe then told his kids to find something to block first to stop the wind so they wouldn't freeze to death. He also commanded his son to go to the security room and turn on the heating. His wife was staring at Xiaomo and she thought that Xiaomo was poisoned. At the same time, Xiaomo is still cold. He heard Joe telling him again not to fall asleep. Joe was aware that he owed his life to Xiaomo so he didn't want Xiaomo to die. When Xiaomo opened his eyes again, he saw Mrs. Fang ordering Joe to go upstairs and find Xiao Zhu. He closed his eyes again and remembered that Mrs. Fang had come to help him. When he opened his eyes once more, he saw a doctor come and he heard the people around calling the doctor as Dr. Zhu. The doctor brought him to her own operating room. Joe was asking him to be okay. He wanted to remain by his side but then Dr. Zhu told Joe to go outside. Xiaomo still felt how cold it was. With such a low body temperature, he's still alive. Are you some kind of cryogenic person? The doctor said. Right now, Xiaomo feels tired of enduring the pain. He then passed out so the doctor observed his body first. After checking everything, she then recorded a report to say that her patient was a male around 20 to 25 years old, with suspected poisoning symptoms. She also declared that Xiaomo was currently in coma. His vital signs were abnormal and his body temperature was still around 10 degrees. About his pulse and reflexes, it seemed to be normal according to Dr. Zhu. She cannot believe that Xiaomo is still alive. She went to her machine and saw that blood separation had been completed so she decided to immediately check the results. And upon seeing Xiaomo's blood color, she becomes interested to know more about him. She puts down the blood of Xiaomo and it has 3 different types of colors. Before centrifugation, the appearance of the blood is no different from normal blood. After centrifugation, the blood has separated into blue impurities. Since blood sample analysis will take a bit more time, she decided to just continue observing Xiaomo's surface characteristics. Earlier, she thought that the thing in the body of Xiaomo was veins, but upon closer inspection, she realized that it was some kind of allergic reaction. At this time, Xiaomo woke up. He instantly saw Dr. Zhu and he forgot what happened to him earlier. He was about to get up but then the lady suggested him not to move around. Xiaomo then asked her who she was and the doctor suddenly chuckled while lit up a cigarette. She leans in and informs Xiaomo that she is just an unlicensed black market doctor, and due to some reason, she cannot reveal her exact name to Xiaomo, but she permitted him to call her Doc Zhu. She then asked Xiaomo what happened to him to end up in his current situation. But then, Xiaomo was confused. Doc Zhu moved closer to him while saying that she had never seen symptoms like Xiaomo had right now even before. Tell me, what exactly did you experience on the second basement level? She added. She honestly told Xiaomo that she was really very interested in him right now. At this time in Brooklyn, the temperature is negative 29 degrees. The known world record for the lowest body temperature is 13.7 degrees. This is the lowest temperature ever recorded. Although theoretically, the human body can tolerate 0 degrees. But at this temperature, body tissue will freeze and cells in the body will be destroyed. In fact, temperatures below 32 degrees can cause atrioventricular tremor and death, called hypothermia. Human beings cannot survive in an environment of negative 29 degrees. It is even more impossible to survive when the body temperature is lower than 13.7 degrees. Doc Zhu checked Xiaomo's temperature and his current body temperature is 11.5 degrees. She stood while saying that it was a miracle Xiao was still alive. Xiaomo at the same time was shocked. He then concludes that it may be because of his ability. Since he doesn't want to waste time thinking about it, he decides to escape and complete his plan. Doc Zhu was still analyzing his blood, but then she suddenly smiled when he finally figured out the case of Xiaomo. Xiaomo suddenly slipped on the ground since it had water. He fell down while the lady reminded him that she already told him not to move since his body was still weak. She then informed Xiaomo that she had figured out what he had. Do you have superpower? She asked casually. Of course, Xiaomo was shocked and he wondered how the lady knew about it. He didn't want to stay longer in this room so he lied that he didn't know about it. He asked the lady if she was just joking but then the lady told him not to underestimate the doctor's powers of observation. Plus, she also had been to the second basement. As long as Xiaomo's ability was activated, even if he had to climb back up, he believes it will still be much faster despite his situation. When he tries to use his power to escape, he suddenly vomits blue blood again, so Dokju then asks him if he's fine. He was so confused. He was staring at his hand, wondering why he could not use his acceleration. He recalled his last experience, trying to figure out everything. At the same time, someone was heading to the operating room of Dokju. He had 2 subordinates with him and he told him to behave once he met with Dr. Zhu. They knocked on the door, causing Xiaomo and Dokju disturbed. Xiaomo wondered who it was as he worried since he was naked. "Get lost," Dokju uttered. She then extended her hand to assist Xiaomo to stand. Xiaomo asked him who was outside, but then she won't answer and instead ordered him to lie down. Xiaomo followed what she said and he asked more questions, but Dokju told him not to ask anything. She held Xiaomo's face and told him that he must listen to what she would say if he wanted to survive. "Wait here and close your eyes, and don't move when you hear anything. Do you understand?" she added. She then opened the door and it turned out that her visitor was DeLong. DeLong apologized to her for disturbing her time, and she then asked him with annoyance what he needed. Before DeLong could answer, he asked Dokju if he could at least enter first. Dokju permitted him and he then told the lady that he heard that resident 409, which is Xiaomo, was receiving treatment at her place. Xiaomo heard DeLong's voice and he knew it was really him. DeLong said that there was something he needed to ask Xiaomo, but then Dokju lied that Xiao unfortunately died due to poisoning. "That's such a pity," DeLong said, but his reaction clearly says that he doesn't believe the lady. Xiaomo was confused about why DeLong was here since he recalled that DeLong should have been completely frozen before he showed up in this building. He was annoyed that DeLong was here and he complained that he could not use his acceleration right now, because if he could, he would be willing to kill DeLong immediately. Unfortunately, DeLong was staring at him and noticed something. "Dokju, you've really worked hard all this time. Are you sure this person is really dead? I think I just saw him blink. How about I help you check again?" he said. "What do you mean? He's dead," Dokju replied. DeLong then grabbed a cutter and concluded that it might be a false death. DeLong lifted up this cutter and was about to stab Xiaomo, but then Dokju suddenly slapped him and said, "Are you questioning my abilities, Luo DeLong?" His men were shocked and mad at Dr. Zhu for hitting their boss. They wanted to hit the lady, but DeLong stopped them. DeLong then apologizes to Dr. Zhu and admits his rudeness. He then left and Dokju then permitted Xiaomo to get up. Dokju was smiling, believing that Xiaomo had many questions to ask right now. Xiaomo concludes that there is a reason why DeLong wanted to kill him in his past life, but now he cannot think of a reason why Luo DeLong wanted to kill him earlier despite that it was the first time he met him. Also, he wondered why Dokju wanted to protect him. But before all of that, he wanted to know where his clothes were, so he asked the lady about it first. That's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you wish to have another part of this recap, please give us at least 2,000 likes. Please don't forget to comment and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. Until next time.